All right, this is one of those few times. I post here because usually these problems aren't as bad and I can handle them on my own. This time, however, it's gonna be a little crazy. Let me start from the get-go. Basically, what happens in my family is that my husband Gail is very attached to his family, especially his parents. It's gone to the point where if they jump, he's not going to ask why. Instead, he's going to ask how high. Obviously, that level of dependence and trust can sometimes come back to bite you even when you don't realize it. That's what's happening with Gail. He doesn't realize how damaging his dependence is getting, and when I try to tell him about it, he just gets mad at me. The very main reason that all this happened, and the reason I'm posting this story, is because my husband has been spoiling them since the very beginning. I get wanting to take care of your parents. I do. If my parents were living near us, I'd like to take care of them as much as possible too, but I would not do it to the extent that Gail and I do. That's the limit that I understand we don't have to cross. But Gail, unfortunately, does not. My in-laws have been asking us for money. Since we've both got stable incomes, and it's not like my in-laws are not well off or anything like that. They don't necessarily need the money from us. They can support themselves and even afford certain luxuries, so they don't need to ask for money, but they still do. Initially, I was okay with it because I understood that they're Gail's parents, and I'd need to fit them into our lives as well, but over time I got a bit icky about it. We've sent them so much money over the past years that if we saved that amount, we'd be able to go abroad on a vacation twice. I told Gail that he should not spend all his money on them simply because, well, then there's nothing left for us to save. But he did not understand. He started arguing with me, telling me that we're living a comfortable and well-fed life. So why can't this spare some extra money we have and just give it to his parents? I tried to make him understand that it's not about not supporting them. It's about him not caring about supporting me. We would need money if we ever decided to have kids and if we wanted to make a big purchase or anything like that. It looked like he understood my point, but he still was not willing to stop giving them money. That made me so angry that I almost left the house that night. My anger was fueled even more when I remembered how they treated me in the past. If they were nice and loving ones who treated me well and let me feel like I was actually a part of the family, maybe I'd be nicer to them. They were horrible to me. They never made me feel like I was a part of the family at all. And when I needed them to be there for me, they weren't. Someone Gail and I got married. We weren't that well off. I had just graduated, and it had not been that long since Gail started working as well. This meant that we didn't actually have enough money to invest in a house and buy it. I perfectly remember Gail and I going to my in-laws and having a proper discussion with them, telling them about everything we're going through and making them explain how hard it is. However, when we asked for some money to start the process, they immediately said no. It's like they did not even take any time to think it through. Instead, they just gave us an hour-long lecture on how we're adults now, so we need to be responsible and take care of our savings and whatnot. They told us that we needed to work extra hard to achieve our dreams and every other crap they could possibly spit from their mouth. I was a bit frustrated at their response, but I decided not to say anything and just kept my thoughts to myself. It was heartbreaking to see them not helping out their own children, but if Gail was okay with it, then I thought I needed to be fine with it as well. But then they did it again a year and a half ago. I inherited a house from my mother. It was a beautiful house, but it needed a lot of work. Obviously, we did not have the money or the resources needed to make these changes. I mean, we had some of the money saved, but we needed a bit more than that, and so we decided to ask my in-laws again for some money. Just a little sum of money to help us get the house ready to live in, but they said no to that too. And instead, they told us to earn our money and stop asking them for money. Not just that, but they told me to sell the house and invest in something that's actually useful and not something that looks like crap. As soon as I heard that, there were fumes coming out of my ears. This house was very precious to me as something that was connected to my mother, and to hear my in-laws talking about it like it was trash was very hurtful. I did not express that to them because I thought I would look rude, but I should have. Maybe then they would not be as shameless as they are right now. I'll tell you guys exactly why they're shameless, though. So basically, after they rejected us, I gathered money and worked my butt off to renovate the house. I made it look presentable, and I made it look amazing. It was hard. But once I started earning as well, things got a bit easier, so I could manage it. Anyways, it had been a few months since I invited my in-laws for dinner for my mother-in-law's birthday. By that time, the house looked absolutely incredible. I made it as perfect as I could, and I was very proud of it. Moving on, the day they actually came over for dinner, I was expected to go pretty well because, well, usually, if it's not money related, the conversation stays pretty squabble-free. Obviously, with these people, there's not one moment where you're not discussing money. So they come over, and as soon as they enter the house, their eyes go wide. Internally, I'm smirking because I know they did not expect me to go this hard on the renovation. Wide-eyed. They're completing my house way too much. I mean, some compliments are fine, like, oh, you did a wonderful job, or oh, your house looks incredible. But there was so much more. Every part of the house they'd stop, inspect, and then just ask me how much it cost. Why would they ask that for some stuff? Yeah, I get curious about it, especially because they knew we did not have the money. It's not like they gave us the money either, so I'm sure they were curious as to how I managed to afford all this, but honestly, I found their questions a little rude. It just felt way too forced. Like they weren't actually interested in the job I did or how pretty I made it. Look, they were just interested in how much it cost, and I actually did not realize it back then, but after what happened during dinner, it all made complete sense to me. Dinner was chaotic, to say the least. It started out very decent. It was a good conversation going on, and it even had a nice flow to it. But then my mother-in-law started talking about dream vacations. First, she asked me what my dream vacation was and where I'd like to go the most. But when I answered her question, it felt like she wasn't really interested and was waiting for me to finish as soon as possible. I gave her what she wanted, of course, and I made my answer very short, just the name of the place, and then she got all excited all of a sudden. That's when I get a bit suspicious, because there's no way that she was that excited for me, and then she opened up about the real reason behind all the weird acts that they've been doing ever since they stepped into this house. They wanted us to help them build a vacation house after all the years of rejecting us every time we've asked him for financial help. They'd come to us and asked us to pay for the quote vacation house. They're not even poor or anything. Why do they need our help? Why can't they save up enough and get a house for themselves? They think that just because I've managed to get my house to look so gorgeous, we're some sort of rich couple now, I guess. But we're not. I asked them to explain it to me a bit more, just so I could have a better idea of what they need and why they're getting a vacation house and stuff. But the response shocked me. They want to get one just because they're bored with their lives and they want a house to be able to go to every other weekend. For some reason, they can't afford the house by themselves, and they told us that they know that we've got money saved on because this house looks like it costs a lot. At that point, I was aggravated, and so I told them we did not have that kind of money to waste. That was very wrong too. Say because Gale looked at me like I murdered his parents in front of him as. Soon as these words were out of my mouth, he glared at me and told me that anything that we spent on his parents, happiness was never a waste and I needed to quote, watch what I say, which is ridiculous because he knew I was right. A vacation house is not a necessity to have, and it's not like they're going to die if they don't get it. My father-in-law still works and they can save up and get one by themselves. They don't want to do that though. They want us to give them money so they can take the easy way out. Then I remembered that Gale is not an only child. He has an older brother as well, so why weren't they asking him for money? I brought that up because they were getting too defensive and looked like they were about to make a living hell for me. Apparently, Seb isn't as financially stable as us, so they don't want to burden him with this. Oh, I'm sorry, but I could not keep my mouth shut at that point, and I expressed what I was feeling, but I made sure I was not being disrespectful. Seb was earning as much as we were. He just had children to take care of, so most of its expenses were going towards that. However, I wanted to try it for kids as well. And if we kept giving my in-laws money, how would I save enough to take care of my children? The counter argument we received was that we don't have children right now, which means we've got more money to spare than Seb and his family. And then they started emotionally blackmailing Gale because they knew that they would not be able to get through to me. They started talking about how they were lonely and bored because both their sons had started their own families, which is why a vacation would benefit them really. Well, Gale fell into the trap because why wouldn't he? As soon as his parents get a little bit emotional, he does everything that's asked of him. I knew I could not give him in, but I didn't want my in-laws to know they've won us over. How I kept saying that the arguments were progressively getting worse and unstoppable. Well, this is the consequence of that. A week ago, Gale and I had one of our biggest fights. We've never fought this hard before, and it was actually a bit weird how aggressive he was. Obviously, there was no physical aggression. He wasn't raising his hand to me or anything, but his words hit much harder. He basically told me that $100,000 he's planning to give to his parents is not just mine, so he can do whatever he wants with it. He thinks that he was being nice by asking for my opinion and my permission before taking action on his own, but he doesn't need to do that anymore. The fight got worse when he actually gave the money to his parents, and he returned home from work one day and did not even bother mentioning anything to me. It wasn't until my mother-in-law called me to tell me that she got the money that I found out that he gave it away. I was enraged, obviously. We had not discussed giving the money away, and he knew I was not okay with the fact. Yet he was still going to go ahead and just give it away. He didn't even keep a single dollar for ourselves. The entire $100,000 he saved up over the years, he gave to his parents. Then, when I told him that he needed to get the money back, he told me to shut up and let him deal with his parents how he wanted. Even when I was factually arguing that we're a couple and we should decide on big financial decisions together, he wasn't having it. It seemed like he totally got tired of us constantly arguing because he threatened me with a divorce right in the middle of our argument. He suddenly screamed at me and told me if I tried stopping him from giving a share of the money to his parents, he was going to get a divorce and leave me all alone. It was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I've been with him through everything in his life, and now he was going to leave me because I was trying to put our family first instead of his parents. At that point, all I could ask him was if he did not care about what I wanted and how I wanted to build our life together, have children, and live a happy life. He cared for none of it, but instead, he wanted to give all this to his parents while I was suffering in the background. In a moment of anger, he walked out of the house and slammed the door behind him. And it's been a week since he's been home. I've tried texting him multiple times. I've called him so many times, and I've left more than a dozen voicemails. But he keeps ignoring them or leaving me on hold. Guys, I'm so hurt because I didn't think I'd ever lose Gail, especially over something as silly as this. I've contacted my in-laws, and it turned out that Gail had gone back to live with them for the past week. He hasn't been home once, and I'm so stressed and confused about what's going to happen and how I'm going to deal with everything. Update number 3. So a few more days into this mess, I decided that I could not keep myself trapped in this family forever, especially if they act as messed up as they are right now. I was not sure about my decision in the early days, but now, after waiting for Gail to come home for more than a week, I decided that I needed to take action and set him straight. Well, if he wants a divorce, that's exactly what he's going to get. So I contacted my lawyer first thing that morning and let him know the situation. She let me know that I could not only divorce Gail, but also take him to court. After the entire meeting ended, I decided that I did not need this house anymore. The only thing it was doing now was reminding me of my husband and all the good and bad memories that we've had together. That's why I decided to sell the house and keep the money for myself. Gail could not even ask for this money legally because the house was in my name, given to me by my mother, and I could do anything I pleased with it, right? So I sold it. It brought me a lot of money, which helped make the court case much easier to process. So the next day, while I finalized the divorce papers and had them sent to Gail, I knew the exact time he received those papers because I got the most heated phone call one could ever get. He was talking about how I was being stupid, and it didn't matter because he was going to divorce me as well. And then he got to find out about me taking him to court, and he absolutely exploded. Obviously, no one wants to go there or anything, but I hung up on him midway because I've had enough of his anger now. Then the days of the court case came. I was feeling all kinds of jitters, and I was nervous. What if it went wrong? What if I lose the money I've made from selling the house? All these kinds of questions were racing in my head. But I did not let them take control of me. I got dressed in a way that I said was confident, put my best smile on, and I reached the court doors. It was the final hearing of the divorce, and it went incredibly well. Not only did I get to keep all the money from the house, I also got $100 from Gail as alimony as a legal obligation. I was shocked. I did not expect to win more money from him, but it was worth it for all the damages he's done to me and to my mental health. I should accept this money with grace. The sour expression on their faces just added to my glee, and I knew that they thought that they could rob me of my money and my house, but they probably weren't expecting to lose everything themselves. It's been a few days since then, and life has been relatively peaceful. I did get a phone call from my mother-in-law, where she was bashing me for what I've done and told me I could never have a family of my own because I don't know how to take care of people, that I'm just incredibly selfish who only looks at her needs and not others. Apart from that, it's been okay. I got a new apartment for myself using the money I made selling the house, and now I can finally save up as much money as I want without having to worry about other people constantly asking for it. But let me know, guys. Do you think I went too far by taking him to court? Let me know in the comments down below. I was a little surprised when I was reading the comment section of this one. Let me break down what some of the comments were saying. Some of them were actually coming up with the idea by saying, you know what? I don't really blame Gail. I mean, what's wrong with giving your parents $100,000 when you have $200,000? But there were other commenters basically saying, no, that's ridiculous. Like OP said, they've been helping his parents for years. They're trying to build their own house, and they need that money. So this is where the comments really split apart. They were saying they do not agree that OP should just sell the house, take the money because it's under her name. They thought that was disrespectful. But there were about 50 saying no, that was exactly what she needed to do. So guys, drop your comments down below. Let's discuss this one. My name is Mr. Reddit. I narrate stories every single day. Hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya. Thank you.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward.
"Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak.
"There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer."
"Meetings should be for employees only." "Absolutely right."
His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick.
"I'm leaving." After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer.
I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale.
"Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him.
And he turned even paler than Nick.
Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam.
My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out.
I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything."
The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke.
"Take care." That was our last conversation.
Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment.
Yet, my father never visited me even once.
I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education.
Listen up.
Our work can change the future of our employees.
Don't drag us down.
On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly.
There was a reason for this.
Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state.
But that was long ago.
Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose.
I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said?
I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him.
Someone was watching me with a smirk.
In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go.
You are the latter.
It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened.
Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results.
As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty.
Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey.
I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day.
Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today?
Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today.
I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly.
They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job.
Having joined the company wanting to do customer service.
I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look.
To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally,
Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance.
As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick.
If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America.
Nick began the presentations.
Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them.
The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me.
There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer.
He was likely talking about me.
I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently.
Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right.
After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking.
The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation.
Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life.
I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving.
I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home.
The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk.
In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale.
Nick! What's wrong?
Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick.
And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires.
Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen.
They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday.
Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips.
The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally.
President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles.
Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief.
Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction.
Do you know how much revenue we get from that company?
We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike. What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed.
He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.